Thank you for joining us on this second series concerning the New Horse Owners Seminar. And what this is all about, if you didn't see the first one, we have it recorded so you can go back and watch it at your time, on your time. But this is all about what it takes to purchase a new horse, what the expectation might be for ownership in terms of responsibility and for cost. And so we're proud of putting out this second series today. Last time, if you remember, we went into things like benefits of horse ownership, what does a horse cost in terms of a purchasing price, what might be expected there. And so today, the series 2, our ideas here are what are the exact cost or some projected cost in terms of feed expense, veterinary expense, and there's obviously some more things that we're going to discuss because feed and veterinary costs are not just the sole part of ownership. If just as a reminder here, Series 3 and Series 4 are coming up in January and February of 2025. Series 3, put on your calendars, is January 18th from 10 to 11 Central Standard Time. We'll do again a Facebook Live just like we did for Series 1 and 2. And then also Series 4 is February 15th. From 10 to 11 Central Standard Time again. We'll go over Series 3 is about riding the horse, what we're going to do in terms of goals and objectives for riding. Series 4 is going to be how do we prove ownership in terms of buying and selling horses as we move forward with our horse project. Like I stated last time, if you are looking for more content concerning horses, training tips, podcast episodes that are educational and entertaining with interesting people. I'm putting out shorts on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, lots of different things going out there. So whatever your interest needs are, we're trying to do some of that at Taking the Reins with Clay Cavinder for our podcast and Taking the Reins Mississippi State or MS State for YouTube, Instagram, and the like. All right, so let's jump into what is our objectives for this Series 2 concerning horse ownership. We want you to, one, understand the basic financial responsibilities. Again, these are going to be projected ideas, not necessarily exacts, but we want you to have a understanding of what those financial responsibilities may be. And two, we want to be able to determine budget for potential ownership. That's something that you and your family will have to figure out, but maybe based on the guidelines we give and maybe based on some of the things that we stick out for you, you'll be able to determine a projected budget and hopefully be pretty close to what you can do financially in your own home. So we're jumping forward now. Last time we talked about what it takes to buy the horse. Now we've got the horse. You notice I emphasize the here. So you found the horse for you, for your child, for your family, or whoever it may be. Like we said in our objective, we need to have a budget in mind. I think that's good family planning and good ideas. To be a good steward with your money, you probably need to have a good budget in mind. So today we'll give you some ideas about that. What about when we find the horse we want and we have an asking price? Is the asking price and the purchase price the same thing? Not necessarily. Purchasing a horse is exactly like purchasing anything on the free market. If you're going to buy a car, a house, anything of value, you have a purchase price and an asking price. So you should expect to, for lack of better terms, wheel and deal down to a price that you're comfortable with, not just take the asking price. Now, doesn't mean the buyer won't say, nope, firm, solid, we want this much, and then you kind of know where you stand, but don't feel like you have to just jump right to the purchase price. Negotiation is what we want to kind of emphasize here. When you visit the owner, and you should do that before you purchase the horse, you should have a owner visit, and you want to see where this horse is coming from. I think there's a lot to be said about the cleanliness of the barn, the way things are put in order, the pride in which the owner takes in the horses that he has. I think that says a lot about what you're probably buying from in terms of just reputation. There's reputation all through the horse industry. So asking other industry professionals about someone and their reputation is definitely something that you should do. I have heard numerous stories where scammers are using different platforms to be able to try to scam people into purchasing horses. Horses are no different. So, for instance, I'll tell you about a friend of mine who was going to purchase a horse, looked online, found the horse that they wanted. They really liked the video. They liked the pictures. They liked the pedigree. They liked everything. The purchasing price, asking price was great for them. They liked everything about it. But then when they went ahead and contacted this seller and asked to come to Tennessee to visit, then the seller required a deposit on the horse prior to visit. That should throw up red flags all day. Any reputable breeder or owner is going to be expecting you to come visit, expecting you to come look at the horse, put your hands on the horse. Now, it's up to them whether or not they want you to ride or let you ride the horse. That's something that's up to the seller to do. And there are some things involved in that in terms of liability and risks and all those things that the owner may not allow for that, but I think pretty routinely people are expected to come to the farm, see the horse in person in his home environment, and potentially ride it if agreed upon. Now, once the agreement is made, the question is, when does ownership change hands? And in most states, the states are different it is different from state to state legally when ownership actually moves from one owner to the next. In most states, that is a cash transaction or a cash in hand kind of thing. So if you write, and that includes a check, if you write a check for the horse, money changes hands. At the moment that the money changes hands, a new ownership has occurred. So when you write the check and hand it over, even though you may not have breed registry transaction done with wherever the horse's breed comes from, if it's AQHA, you have to do a transfer of ownership with them. They'll move the papers, the horse's registration papers, into the new owner's name. That takes time, and there is a small cost involved with that. But that is not a legally binding thing necessarily. It is a agreed upon transaction. Ownership changes hands when money changes hands. Now, with that said, I think it's always prudent, whether you're the seller or the buyer, to encourage a bill of sale so that there is proof that this thing happened on a certain date for said horse at said price. And so that's maybe another discussion for another day, but those are all things to be thinking about once you've found the horse. All right, basic responsibilities. Here are some things I outlined for you in terms of basic responsibilities and expectations that you should have. Feed and hay, of course. All horses have to eat hay. That form of roughage can come from pasture management, but then that's a whole nother set of responsibilities that we have in terms of pasture management. So we'll talk about and break that out a little bit. Feed, do horses need feed? That depends. They need hay, absolutely. So we'll have to talk about those costs involved. Hoof care, absolute expectation that you're going to have to pay for routine hoof care, and that is a reoccurring cost. It just keeps coming back. Should you expect vet visits? We'll discuss that. There's always a question mark. Some people don't even know that horses need dental work. We'll talk about that and what that entails. Are we going to send this horse to a trainer? Are we going to provide lessons to receive from a trainer? Those are going to be at a cost. Do I have land? Do I have a truck? Do I have a trailer? Am I going to board the horse? Those are all things we have to kind of define as we move along in this purchase. Deworming vaccinations are going to happen. And then liability is a huge question mark that we'll discuss a little bit too, because there is liability in equine ownership for sure, both financially and responsibly. All right, so let's break this out into dietary needs. We can basically split the dietary needs of the horse into two categories. We have a concentrate or grain ration, and then also a forage, a hay or pasture grazing situation. Now, all horses need forage, not all horses need concentrate or grain. Here's some things to think about when choosing whether or not you're going to feed grain, and if you are, which grain. That is, there's so many brand names out there. You can go Nutrina, Purina, different Seminole feeds, there's different manufacturers of feeds out there that all come in a different bag, and you can go to the co-op and pick out your grain that you want to choose to feed your horse. They all come with a different price tag. They all come with different things in them, whether there's crude protein or energy or dietary fiber. It's pretty complex in some regards, but we'll talk a little bit about what you may need to do with your horse. Then the question is, really, does my horse need grain? Really, the only reason that we feed concentrate grain to a horse is to up the calorie intake for the horse to meet his dietary need in terms of calorie expenditure. If the horse is a performance animal and we are using him like a performance animal, he's an athlete, then he is going to require more energy than maybe what my forage can provide. So I have to think about that a little bit. If I'm using the horse in either a light, a moderate, or a heavy capacity, a performance load, then I may need to feed grain in order to keep his body weight and his energy to a sustainable manner. If I decide to do that, then how much grain does he need? We'll talk about that too, because there's kind of a conflicting thing sometimes. People think they need to feed one thing and actually the feed tag says something else. How do I find the right number? We'll talk about that. And then on the other side of things, forage, whether it's supplemental hay, I buy hay that's been stored, whether it's in round bales or square bales, typically for horse owners. Or do I turn them out on pasture and graze? Depends. Depends on, do you have pasture? Even if you do have land, do you have quality forage for the horse to intake? What is the stocking rate consideration here? Do I put a horse on a turnout paddock, a small paddock, or does he need one whole acre to himself, or 2 acres or 3 acres? That obviously is geographically variable. If you live in New Mexico, your stocking rate may be a little bit of more of a discussion than maybe if you live in Mississippi. So we just have greener forage here, more water for grass to grow, and so our stocking consideration in here in other places, like where I grew up in Oklahoma, a lot of green grass, so the stocking rate can be considerably smaller acreage. What type of forage? We can get into legumes versus grass hays, lots of different things we can discuss here, but again, due to the complexity of the situation, I just really want to stick to kind of the basic expectations that you may have. All right, if you decide that grain is needed, I'm going to ride this horse. I'm going to use him in a performance setting in a way that requires an added energy intake, caloric intake. Then I need to determine what is needed. And that is going to be really, again, up to you to kind of look into. Am I going to go with here's a couple examples of pretty bags I can buy at the co-op, and then I can look at the feed tag and get a pretty good idea of what I need to feed the horse. But there's so much variation from 16% crude protein to 8% crude protein, and what makes my energy values go up or low, or there's so much to that. Probably something that we need to have a series on in the future, just how do I feed the horse. But we're going to make it for simplicity purposes today. We're going to figure out some examples here to give us some understanding of how that works. What we do need to realize is that all these determinations are based on a couple things: weight of the horse, use of the horse, age of the horse. Those are all important considerations when figuring out exactly and precisely how I'm going to go about targeting this horse in terms of a proper diet. So let's use a simplistic example here. We'll make this somewhat easy. If we have 1,000-pound horse, that's an easy number to kind of calculate math here. We'll just take 1,000-pound horse. We'll call him a light working or workload horse. The National Research Council breaks these things out in a complete definition for light versus moderate versus heavy. And they, I can't remember the exact numbers, but like, for example, light work is 2 to 4 hours per week at a 90 beat per minute heart rate, something along those lines. Moderate is 3 to 5 hours, 90 beats average, and so on and so forth. So examples would be horses like, if we're going to take this horse trail riding and ride him 3 or 4 times a week for 3 or 4 hours total, then he might be classified underneath the light work category. If we're going to say performance horse and we're going to use him high performance, he's a rodeo horse, he's a roping barrel horse, and so his workload's going to be high intensity for 3 to 5 hours a week. We may move him into the moderate or even maybe the heavy category, which is going to simply require more energy to sustain his body weight and energy load. Most feed tags are going to say that horses need to be fed 1 to 2% of their body weight per day. So we're going to go conservatively here. We're going to use the lower side of our values today. So we're going to say that the horse needs whatever feed I choose. Feed tag says 1 to 2%. I'm going to start at 1%. So 1% of a 1,000-pound horse is 10 pounds per day. So this horse requires 10 pounds of grain per day. Our feed bags typically weigh 50 pounds, so we can say that we need 1 bag per 5 days, and roughly, again, depending on what you buy, it could range anywhere from $8 to $10 per 50-pound bag up to $25, $30 per 50-pound bag. We're going to say, again, for ease of math, our feed that we chose today costs $20 per bag. And so when I break this out, I need 6 bags per month. That's 72 bags per year. At $20, it's going to cost me roughly $1,440 to feed 1 horse per year if I choose to feed grain. Okay, grain is not the only thing I need to feed. I got to feed forage or hay, as we talked about earlier. And typically on the lowest end, recommendation levels are going to be 1% body weight per day that this horse needs to be ingesting in forage. Okay, so again, there's a lot of different considerations because there's energy differences in grass, hays versus alfalfa or a legume. Legume's more energy dense, going to have more nutrient in it. Again, it depends on quality as well, so many different things. But again, we're just going to typically say that most horse owners are going to feed supplemental hay in a square bale form. It's typically going to be a Bermuda grass hay, pretty common. And those bales of hay depends again on where they're baled and how they're baled, but we're going to say 50 to 60 pounds. We'll say 60 pounds. And you're going to pay anywhere from, you might pay as low as $5 up to $15, $16, depending again on where and who baled it and what the quality is. Now, nothing about a hay can be looked at and visually say that this is a high quality hay or a low quality hay. It may look bad, it may not be green, it may be really stemmy, and those are things that will show you that it's probably on the low side of quality. But really the best bet for your money is to find a way to get a sample of the hay, send it off for analysis. We can do that here at Mississippi State, and for roughly $20, $25 you can get a complete analysis of the forage to tell you exactly what's in it and how good of quality it is. Again, our 1,000-pound horse, we're going to say that because he needs 1%, that's 10 pounds a day. Our bales, we're going to average on 60 pounds. So we're going to say that the horse needs 1 bale of hay per 6 days. That's 5 bales per month. 60 bales per year at $10 is going to give us a value of $600. So combining our concentrate diet and our forage together is going to give us a feed cost per year of just over $2,000. Now, again, for another day, but my recommendation would be to put value in a high quality hay, pay for good hay, and supplement with concentrate as needed. Doing that vice versa, you can see that the cost of the concentrate is greater because there's so many things involved in getting that feed to market. Marketing, the bag cost, all the things, the advertisement that goes into that is being factored into the cost. And so obviously concentrate's going to cost you more than it will grass hay. So find a good grass hay if you can and feed it first. All right, we said that hoof care is something that will be needed. It is going to be needed. We need to do that. And we're going to do that every 6 to 8 weeks probably. Some horses more, some horses maybe a little less. We have to decide whether or not we're going to just have the farrier trim the horse's feet or we're going to put full shoes on. Those are obviously going to come at a different price point. So we're going to value, a trim anywhere from $50 to $75, and shoeing again roughly $150. Some places maybe $200. Just really depends again geographically. If you're in Ocala, Florida, you're going to pay probably over $200 for a full set of shoes on a horse. Here in Mississippi, maybe $125 to $150 for that very same thing. But again, we're going to go on the just average cost here every 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to give us a minimum value here for a yearly cost of $650 for that one horse. Now here's the question, will there be vet visits? And the absolute answer is yes. You will have vet visits associated with horse ownership, just part of it. So 100% you should expect to get to know your local vet, find a good large animal vet, and have their number on hand because you're going to need it. Horses are incident prone typically, and so things happen with horses that we have to just accept. Now, when I was trying to figure out how to present this to you, one of the things I decided was it's just so hard to put a value because it's so variable depending on what happened in the situation that was going to dictate what the cost is from the vet. So I have a friend here in town who I know is very pragmatic in keeping books, and I asked her, I said, can you give me some value on what you spent on your horses per year? She said, I can do better than that. I have an Excel spreadsheet of all the horses I have, broken out into year, cost, what happened, all this stuff. So these are some numbers I extracted from her. Here's 2022, 23, and 24. Obviously, 24 is still going, so these aren't year-end totals, but it'll give us an idea of what she's put on her books for cost of vet bills. All right, so medicine costs, look at this here. Let's look at the top line. Medicine cost for 22 was only $80. This is on a horse, one horse. 23 was $293. So far in 2024, $551. So again, great variability between one year to the next. Colic, this is again, look at the variability here, 883 versus 1510 versus 0. 2024 has been a good year. Have not had any colic injury problems, so that's great. But again, last year spent over $1,500 on colic problems. Injuries from whatever the purpose may be. Horse runs into the fence. Horse steps on something that injures his leg. Whatever it may be. Kicks a stall too hard. Fights with another horse. Whatever it may be. In 2022, $1,127. 2023 was a great year, $45. And then bingo bango here in 2024. It's been another down year in terms of cost for injury. $3,392. All right, lameness issues. Horses will go lame at some time. If you own a horse, at some point, they will have lameness issues. They all do. I don't know very many that don't. 2022, $220, all the way up to almost $600 in 2023. So here's our totals from year to year, from little over $2,000 up to just over $4,000. On a 3-year average per year, she's spending roughly $3,051 for vet visits. Again, you can take that with a grain of salt and think, I wouldn't have that much. That's overinflated. I'm just giving you one person's example of 3 total years, not just one, but you can see that there's such variability involved in that. All right, so dental care, deworming, vaccinations, I kind of all lumped in here along with training and lessons. This kind of goes into what you're willing to spend, what you want to do, what the objectives are of your horse ownership. I think that dental care is probably the most overlooked, underrated thing that we need to have done with the horse. Because the horse's teeth continually grow, and the way he grinds his food and rotates his lower jaw to grind that food should create even wear on his teeth and keep his teeth kind of ground down to be flat surfaces that will allow for greater breakdown of food particles, which again is just going to aid in digestion. However, all horses wear a little bit differently, and what happens is they don't fully wear to one side, and that side starts to grow, and we get these peaks on the sides of the teeth that can become sharp, and then it's going to do 2 things. 1, prevent full rotation of the bottom jaw to grind food completely, and 2, cause sharp points that actually penetrate the tongue or the cheek and cause irritation, and the horse doesn't want to eat or chew from there. So either one of those situations is going to limit the amount of feed ingested and limit the amount of nutrients absorbed because of that. So I would suggest that you have your horse's dental float done once a year at the minimum. And again, that's going to cost you, again, baseline, somewhere in the ballpark of $150 per year on that one horse. Deworming, this is a variable thing too. This is something you can do on your own. You can go to the co-op, buy paste dewormer, very safe thing to use, and then deworm your horse yourself if you're comfortable with that. Depending on where you live, geographical location, how wet it is, how dry it may be, is the horse out on pasture and grazing all the time? These are things that are going to maybe require more deworming or less deworming, but on routine, I'd say every 3-4 months is kind of the ballpark figure. So I figured here 4 times a year costs you $15, $20 maybe at the most for a tube of dewormer. So our value of $60 is going to give us an estimate. Now, do we want to have training and lessons? If you're going to buy a younger horse that's not completely what you want it to be, and you don't know how to properly train the horse for the discipline that you are interested in, you're going to have to send the horse off to a trainer. I don't know very many trainers today that are under $1,000 per month, and that's a really easy number to kind of calculate. And if your expectation is just to get the horse nice and saddle broke so that you can enjoy riding him, you can expect sending that horse 3 to 6 months somewhere. At least 3 is probably the low end, 6 is probably average, in order to get him to a place that he can be trusted and used in a way that's going to make you comfortable and have a lot of fun with him. You can buy an older horse that's already broke, and that's great. Just the value goes up, and so the front end cost is going to be more. But occasionally you're going to, if you don't know precisely what you're doing, you may need to send the horse to a trainer once or twice a year for what we'd call a tune-up, just to kind of re-educate the horse in some certain things. And so there will be costs associated with that. If you want to kind of do it yourself, you're a DIY guy, then lessons may be the route. $50 per lesson is conservative. That's an hour lesson typically. You're probably talking more in the $75 per hour range. And if you take one a month, that'll give you roughly about $600 per year. If you add competition into that, I want to compete, I want to go, I want to do things, man, there's competition costs involved with not just entry fees, but transportation costs. If you've got a professional helping you, that's going to be a cost as well. So that's, again, varied quite a bit, but things to consider as you move forward with horse ownership. I put a slide in here just to kind of bring it to your mind. Land, vehicles, boarding. These are all considerations. Do I currently own land? If I do own land, are the zoning restrictions within the area that I live? Do they allow horses even? There's so much involved in that. Do I simply want to take off some of the responsibility, pay for boarding, and include the person boarding, the person that owns the boarding facility, feeds for me and cares for me? That's all great. It lowers the responsibility from day to day that you may have because maybe you're too busy for that every day. But the cost goes up. You can, again, depending on where you live, you can expect $350 to $800, maybe more, $100 per month. And that's going to be, if it's your full boarding facility in Florida, let's go back to the extreme again, Ocala, Florida maybe. You're at a full boarding facility that includes stalling, turnout, grain and hay, maybe blanketing if it's needed, something like that. You're going to pay $800 to $1,000 a month, pretty easy. If you're here in Mississippi and just want to rent land from someone, you just want to turn out in the pasture, $150, but you're still going to have to pay for feed. You're going to have to come feed the horse and do some of those responsible things. So again, that is a consideration, but varied in itself. Do I need insurance? Homeowners insurance is not going to cover most anything with a horse. You may want to invest in property insurance that's going to protect you if someone comes onto your property and rides the horse and gets injured. There's a lot of things there to consider. If you pay quite a substantial price for the horse and you want to ensure that, because we said before, the horse is kind of injury prone, what if something unfortunate happens and the horse dies? Do I lose my purchase price? And if you don't have mortality insurance, yes. So just like with there's so many pet insurance out there. You can get pet insurance for your dog now. So the horses are no different, a highly valued animal. And so purchasing mortality insurance to kind of protect your investment may be of consideration for you. You could even go into major medical. There are some places out there you can get major medical insurance for the horse to lower those vet costs that we just talked about earlier. But we're going to say on the conservative side, maybe you invest in a plethora of different things, and just again for ease of understanding here, $500 per year is what we're going to factor in. All right, so grand total here. And again, this is a completely ballpark figure, but we're projecting costs for one horse for 1 year. That's going to be $4,000, not including vet, not including land, boarding, not including vehicle. If you want to transport the horse, you got to have a horse trailer, and you got to have a vehicle that can pull the horse trailer. Cars won't do that typically. So vehicle and then competition costs, it's quite a bit. But with all that said, the last thing I want to do is prohibit or shed a negative light on horse ownership. I just want to be real with you and make sure that you understand what you're getting into before it's too late. So why would I even own a horse after watching that and thinking about that, considering all those things? Maybe you're asking yourself that question, why would I want to own a horse? Remember the benefits. So many life-proven benefits. All right, there's so many things: life skill development, patience, confidence, working with others. So many things that come about through horse ownership, teaching of responsibility, so many things. So is that investment cost worth the return that you get from teaching those things to your children, or finding solace in just working in the barn yourself? That's a proven thing too, that working with horses and around horses can de-stress people. So that may be worth the input as well. But all of us have hobbies, probably. If you're a golfer, if you keep a running total of everything you spend on clubs, lessons, green fees, cart fees, what you eat and drink while you're on the golf course, traveling to the golf course, whatever it may be, I bet you'd be surprised at how much you're willing to spend per year. So even though $4,000 on the conservative side may seem like a lot, maybe in comparison to our other hobbies, it's not really that different. That's something I guess that you'll have to kind of figure out for yourself. But with all that said, I appreciate you kind of playing along with this idea. I would love for you to take the survey to give some feedback. This is the first time we've done this 4-part series, and I think it's of value, but I would definitely like your input about, hey, would you include this maybe next time, or what about this? I love questions, feedback. So please send those to me. My email is right here. You can do that. You can send me those questions and correspond with me directly. And remember, Series 3 is now that we've owned the horse, we understand what the cost is going to be. What can we do with him? That's going to be January 18th, 2025 from 10 to 11 Central Standard Time. Thanks again for being a part of this. I'd love to hear from you. Appreciate you joining in.